Unusual incidents at the University of Missouri led to massive student protests that forced the school's president and chancellor to step down. It also ignited a revolution to expose racism on college campuses across the country. So joining us now is Brea Baker, who's been organizing protests at Yale University, and journalist Mark Lamont Hill. Welcome to The View, man. So the media has certainly focused on one main incident involving an email sent by a faculty member. Can you explain what exactly what's happening?
Right. So every year, students of color are subject to rampant racism in the form of Halloween costumes. And so this year at Yale University, but I would argue to say that that's all across the nation. And this year, the Intercultural Affairs Committee decided to send out an email just asking students to reflect on how their Halloween costume choices impact their peers. And then an administrator, who is the associate master of Silliman College, one of our colleges, sent up a response where she said that she felt that it was a threat to freedom of speech and expression. She felt that we need to be able to make some of these obnoxious, that's a direct quote, obnoxious decisions, and that if you see something that offends you, just look away. And that sparked a lot of outrage because you can't unsee racism, you can't unexperience that, and we can't just look away and ignore being disrespected on a campus that claims to be a diverse student body.
So, November 5th, protesters confronted the faculty member's husband, who also works at the school. Let's take a look.
As your position as manager, it is your job to create a place of comfort and home for the students that live in Silliman. You have not done that. By sending out that email, that goes against your position as manager. Do you understand that? Then
no, I don't agree with that.
Oh. So we want to know, too, we know that there have been a series of events. We know you're a senior there. So what have you personally experienced on campus, Brea?
In my sophomore year, I was walking down the street with a group of friends who happened to also be African American, and an older white woman approached us and said, "Since when did they start letting so many black kids into the school?" And that was to my face. That wasn't an anonymous person on the internet.
Did you report that?
There's nowhere to report these things. That's one of the biggest issues, is that I can tell the dean of the African American Culture Center, and who does she go to? You know, we have Title IX for sexual assault, and there's nothing where I can report and assess, like, you know, instances of racism that I experienced.
We did reach out to Yale University, and this is a statement from the president. It's lengthy, but we have to read it. It says, quote, "I have heard the expressions of those who do not feel fully included at Yale, many of whom have described experiences of isolation and even hostility during their time here. It is clear that we need to make significant changes so that all members of our community truly feel welcome and can participate equally in the activities of the university, and to reaffirm and reinforce our commitment to a campus where hatred and discrimination are never tolerated." That's the statement. Is that enough?
What do you think?
I think that that's an amazing response. That's the kind of response that you want to hear, as opposed to look away, as opposed to pretend this didn't happen, as opposed to saying, oh, it's a free speech, everybody can say what they want. We need to address these issues, because part of it is not just swastikas or racist signs. I mean, that's a big part of campus racism, but it's the everyday forms of racism that you have to go through. People asking you questions like that. Black students being stopped by campus police all the time, more than white students. The fact that faculty, football coaches, and university presidents are disproportionately white all around the country, white men in particular. So there are all these ways that campuses aren't open, diverse places, and we have to address all of them.
And she said no place to report it, too.
Mark, why do you think that it's become so prevalent in the media right now? I mean, we're all talking about it again.
I think August 9th, 2014 started everything, right? After Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, we see protests all around the country, and these young people haven't stopped protesting. They haven't stopped talking, and so we're raising other issues. But let's be clear. In 1950, schools were complaining about racist fraternities, racist It hasn't changed. These stories always go on.
It has changed because the fear of coming out is much less now. But let me ask you this. Are you finding that Asian students are coming to you and saying, we're having the same issues? Are you finding this sort of racism, not just for black kids or Latin American kids? Is it prevalent? Is it for everybody?
Race is an issue that we all have to deal with and talk about and experience. I do think racism and white supremacy on campuses is something particularly aggressive. However, Asian students have unique issues and challenges too. And we have to talk about what kind of Asians do we mean? Do we mean Korean? Do we mean Hmong? Do we mean Cambodian?
Yes.
I've had Asian students, before I was teaching at Morehouse, a black school. I taught at Columbia, I taught at Temple. I've had Asian students say the first day of class, professors walk up to them and say, hey, I want you to be a tutor for the other students. And the kid's like, I stink at calculus. I stink at algebra. I don't know how to do math because I'm Asian. You assume that I can do that. That's a microaggression.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
It's not as bad as the N-word or what you're talking about.
Things are as bad as being the N-word.
It's a positive stereotype as opposed to a negative.
It's not
I'm
positive.
not saying it's great. I'm just saying it's not as bad.
But
it's not as powerful.
At the same time, I think what's unique about Yale is that we are different than a lot of the other institutions. And it's not just a black problem.
Yes.
The Native American students at Yale are disrespected.
Yeah.
It's blatant and it's disrespectful. And when you have, Greg Lukianoff get up at a free speech thing and say, oh, by the way students are reacting, you would think they had burned down an Indian village. That's disrespectful. And it's not just a black problem.
My generation marched a lot. And I think that it's very high time your generation starts it now.
They're not playing.
So here's the question. How do we come to a solution? How do we rectify systemic and institutional racism in America, and especially on campuses quickly?
Quickly, that's a tough question. I think it's white people's work, though. That's what I would say. In the same way, when I talk about ending sexism, I talk about it's male work. Ending racism is white people's work. It's about structural change, it's about policy change, all that.
And I think that that's important, like the demands that we presented to the administration address a lot of the systematic things that we're facing.
Listen, this is a conversation that is ongoing. It affects everyone, black, white, Asian, you name it, it affects you. Don't think it doesn't.
Right.
Thank you for coming. Thanks, you guys. We will be right back.